Throughout the middle of the last century, Dorothy Hartley travelled the length and breadth of the country to write about the life and works of the people of England. So we are here at the Museum of English Rural Life to uncover some of the stories of the people. This episode, the charcoal burner. Do you know of anyone who has encountered a boggart? I know you haven't because, well, if you had, you probably wouldn't be with me now. Very few people have seen a boggart and lived to tell the tale. That said, there have been some, like the man in the story I'm about to share. This man was a charcoal burner. To become a charcoal burner, you essentially had to live the life of a hermit, and you would head off into the forest to live in a little hut beside your kiln until the charcoal was ready. This meant that you didn't get to have many friends. And for the charcoal burner in our story, he would often return back to the town after many months away and find people laughing at the filth on his clothes, laughing at his smell, laughing, but also wanting to keep their distance. And so the people began to call him Charcoal Nil. And he was desperate to get back out to his hut, just to get away from all the bitterness that people showed him in the town. As he crossed into the forest, though, he came across a woman. There wasn't anything particularly special about her. She wasn't overly beautiful or overly ugly, but rather she seemed to study him curiously. It was only when she spoke that he realized she was taking pity on him. And she was asking if there was anything she could do to help such a fine-looking man as he was. A little bit embarrassed, Charcoal Nil just sheepishly said, "Can you burn charcoal?" The woman replied that she was sure she could, if she was shown how. So they travelled together to his little hut. He showed her the kiln with all of the little holes that she could use to check that the smoke wasn't too thick and that the heat and the light was just right. He showed her exactly what kind of sticks needed to be gathered to fuel the kiln and result in the best quality charcoal. And that was when Charcoal Nil realized that now she was there, he would be able to go off and gather the sticks while someone else could mind the kiln. The woman seemed happy to agree to this way of working, and she remained by the kiln while Charcoal Nil went back into the forest to gather up the best fuel he could find. As he trudged back a few hours later, though, he saw that the woman was nowhere to be seen. Had she just been playing with his heart? Who could be as malicious as that? But as he got close, he saw that actually the woman was hiding in the hut. He went over to ask her what was wrong. And she explained that when she had heard footsteps trudging up the track, she had been fearful that maybe he was a boggart. She begged that the next time Charcoal Nil was coming up the track, he gave her some sort of signal to let her know that it was him. Then she would be able to stay by the kiln right until he got there. And after a little bit of thought, Charcoal Nil realized all he needed to do was whistle. That would be enough to let her know it was he who was on his way. This system seemed to work for many, many days. Charcoal Nil would go out and collect all of the fuel that he needed, and the woman did such a good job of tending the kiln that they had many, many harvests of charcoal from inside. And so the time soon came for Charcoal Nil to head back to the town and attempt to sell his wares. And at that moment, the woman asked if she could go back with him and live with him in his home. Now at that, Charcoal Nil felt somewhat embarrassed. He wasn't too versed in the ways of men and women. So at the moment, he had to say to the woman that he wasn't ready. But if she was prepared to work with him again for the next burning season, maybe then he would let her come and stay in his home. She was happy with this, but asked to spend just one more night with him in their hut. The very next day, Charcoal Nil returned to the town with a very broad, beaming smile on his face, and not just because of all the high-quality charcoal he was carrying with him. That charcoal was so much easier to sell that he made plenty of money this time, enough to restock his home, restock the hut, but also refresh his clothes. Charcoal Nil made sure he had enough food to feed both him and the woman, should she be there when he got back to the hut. Though he began to worry whether she would be. After all the time he was in the town, he didn't once catch sight of her. But sure enough, when he got back to his kiln and his hut on the other side of the forest, she was there waiting for him and ready to show him his son. She had given birth to a boy in just a short time that he had spent in the town selling his wares. Now remember, Charcoal Nil wasn't very versed in the ways of men and women, so he only had a very tiny nagging doubt at the back of his mind when she told him that her son was also his. And instead, Charcoal Nil's heart overflowed with joy and pride. Very soon, they went back to work in their now clearly defined roles. Charcoal Nil heading off into the forest every day to collect up just the perfect fuel for getting the best quality charcoal. And as he went back up the track towards their hut, he would send out his signal. And as he approached, he would see not just the woman skillfully tending to the kiln, but also his son doing the same, very diligently helping his mother. He was developing rather quickly. So when the time came for Charcoal Nil to go back to the town and sell his wares, the woman came over to him and asked if he would now be prepared for her and their son to go and live with him in his home in the town. The thing is, Charcoal Nil did have that little nagging doubt. Yes, he wasn't very versed in the ways of men and women, and that gave him some embarrassment, but the speed of it all, it seemed far too fast. So this time he made a promise to take her back with him at the end of the next burning season, so long as she was still here when he got back. The woman seemed to understand his hesitation. She seemed to have a lot of patience for him. She asked to spend just one more night with him in the hut before he left. And the following day, Charcoal Nil went back to the town with a very broad, beaming smile on his face. Certainly not just because of all the high-quality charcoal he was carrying with him. Once again, the charcoal was of such fine quality and of such a great quantity that Charcoal Nil made plenty of money. He wasn't able to just restock his home and restock his hut with enough food for 2 grown adults and 1 very fast-developing young man, but he was also able to buy fresh sets of clothes for them all. And now he was spending so much time at the town that he started to make some friends as well, something he'd never had before. And when those friends invited him to church one Sunday, he thought, since he was still around, he might as well. It had been so long since Charcoal Nil had last been to church, he really couldn't remember anything about what the services were like. So he sat there in the church, really carefully paying attention to everything that was going on around him. But he took extra care when the priest stood up to deliver his sermon. Take extra care to look out for the boggarts. These creatures are some of Satan's foulest minions. They will work extra trickery to lead you astray, especially the female ones, because a boggart cannot breed with a boggart. To produce more boggarts, they need to breed with men. And should you ever invite a boggart into your home, then they will stay. They will claim your soul and the souls of every other being who goes into that house. It was such a powerful sermon that Charcoal Nil was thinking about it all the way back to the hut. But when he got there, he found the woman waiting for him, along with his son, and also his brand new baby daughter. Oh, she was beautiful. The woman had given birth to such a beautiful baby girl in just the short time that Charcoal Nil had been back in the town. It did unsettle Charcoal Nil a little bit how quickly this had all happened, but now he was ready to accept the woman and their children back into his home, just as soon as the current burning season was over. They got back to their duties, just as always, Charcoal Nil going down into the forest to gather up all of the perfect wood for making the best charcoal. But he still couldn't get that priest's sermon out of his mind. He was thinking about it so much that as he came back up the track, he completely forgot to give out his signal. And this time, the woman and the children clearly didn't hear him coming, perhaps because the children were playing around the kiln. And that's why, as he approached, they retained their normal form, their normal hideous form. Each of them tending to the kiln, not by blowing into it with bellows as Charcoal Nil was wont to do himself, but instead with long, bushy tails at the end of their vile, ugly bodies. Charcoal Nil snuck back off the track and raced back to the town to find the priest and ask for the priest's advice what to do. After the priest had listened to everything Charcoal Nil had to say, he calmed him down and explained the solution would be easy. Charcoal Nil listened to the priest's instructions and went out and used his money to purchase the strongest horse he could find and the largest wagon. And as he rode the horse pulling the wagon back towards the kiln, he gave out his signal. He returned to the kiln to say to them all, "I have been so desperate to take you back to my home that, well, I cannot wait any longer. Jump aboard the wagon. We are going home right now." The woman and the children looked delighted. They grabbed their things and they rushed onto the wagon, laughing and giggling with joy. Charcoal Nil slapped the reins and off they raced, not going through the forest, but going around it, around the hills that got very icy at this time of year. Sure enough, they came to a frozen lake, and as Charcoal Nil steered the horse across it, he also slowed the animal down. The woman stuck her head out of the window to ask why they were stopping. Charcoal Nil didn't answer. He just released the wagon from the horse, kicked the sides of the beast, and rode off to the edge of the lake. The woman and the children began to call out for him to return, begging and pleading so plaintively that it really did tug at his heartstrings. But Charcoal Nil tried to keep the priest's words at the forefront of his mind as he raced back towards the forest and the town beyond it. Then suddenly, the cries that the woman and the children were letting out changed from their delicate harmonies to the foul, harsh cries of the boggarts, calling out now not for him, but for other boggarts to come and rescue them. That made Charcoal Nil pause. He had to turn and see what would happen. He turned and saw many other creatures pouring out from the trees, pouring down from the hills, racing across the lake to go and rescue the woman and her children. But as they all got out into the middle of the lake, cracks began to appear in the ice. And there, in front of Charcoal Nil's very eyes, the entirety of the carriage, its contents, and all of the boggarts coming to rescue them was plunged into the depths of the lake, never to be seen again. Or at least, certainly never to be seen again by Charcoal Nil. He had managed to encounter a boggart and survive. But it was only a matter of time before boggarts returned to that town. Charcoal Nil certainly didn't put an end to all boggarts. And so, take care if you ever meet a stranger as you are wandering alone through a forest. especially if this stranger is prepared to give you attention that maybe others won't, maybe do work with you that others wouldn't. And certainly, whatever you do, do not invite that stranger back into the house until you have had at least one chance to catch them unawares.